Hello and welcome to a Soul Wisdom Exchange with me, Regina Curtis, from At Maitri. I'm the owner and creator of At Maitri, and I'm here with Erika Donut, and she is the creator of Erika's Korner. So we're going to chat today about soul wisdom. And soul wisdom is, to me, I think of it as our ways of knowing and being, or the ways we receive information and the ways we express ourselves. So I'm so excited to have Erika here with us today. Erika, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today. I am Erika, as Regina said. I'm joining from New Orleans, where I have lived and worked for the past few years. I primarily work with kids like preschool through middle school. Right now, I work at an after-school program, doing some awesome art projects and cooking classes. And then in the summers, I am grateful to go all the way up out of the South to Maine, where I live and work at a girls' camp up there as the head of arts.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So
And you're
that's a little
just
bit.
back from that. Well, I guess it's been a little while now, but it seems like you just returned.
It does still feel like we just returned, especially because we had the extended stay because of the hurricane, and I feel like I'm still settling into being home.
Yeah, that I feel that too, even though I'm not there with you. So, Erika, you and I have had multiple conversations, and I love our conversations. They always go in these really amazing directions. And I'd love to start out today with having you talk a little bit about your soul wisdom. How do you understand your soul wisdom?
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually been like nervously like trying to like think about this question since I first said I would like come on here with you. And I realized as I was like overthinking, I was like, okay, well, first of all, like that's not helpful. That's not how I get my soul wisdom, actually. That's like me just being in my ego head, like trying to like make a
Yeah.
good impression and be performative. So I had like that moment of realization. But for me, I really realized that it's about like embracing like my inner child
Yeah.
and play and joy and creativity. And it makes total sense to me that I have been drawn to work with kids, and, things that bring me joy are like my Disney movies. And, we
Mhm.
were talking about going to the Ren Fair this weekend, and I'm so excited to be able to costume and play and do that.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, so I think for me, it's about finding those moments of like magic and wonder and all the things that we did so easily when we were kids,
Hmm.
um, that through academia or, trauma or whatever it might be, that we kind of lose touch with that, I think, as we grow older.
Yeah, that's such a great realization too, that play is the way that you feel most aligned or most true, right? And the fact that what was coming in was that head brain centered, like you have to think about what is the right way to say this, but yeah, that and then your little child,
Yep, we can
um,
call her that. That's okay.
your inner child. I don't know. It just sounds like little Erica, like,
That's
hey,
what. Yeah, that's my little
yeah.
Erica. I'm okay with that.
I love it. Well, she was like, "I'm here. I want to play." Yeah, I love that idea. I think that we really do need to play more. And I just actually was in Florida teaching a workshop to breast cancer survivors using creativity, and that was, the modality for processing their journey. And I actually said in that workshop as we were beginning, I was like, I really want you to play this weekend, like
Mhm.
allow yourself to play. And I was like, let me repeat that. Yes, I said play,
Yeah.
because and even in within the structure of a very, not necessarily a playful energy when you're talking about breast cancer and processing
Yeah.
your journey, no matter what your healing journey is about, right? Like, but allowing in the energy of play and creativity it really does kind of like, I see it almost as like a salve, like it just like kind
Mhm.
of um, holds that space in a way that is a little bit, there's like a protective layer around you and around it so that you can process it through in a way that is more easeful. I don't know. How does that land for you?
I feel like that makes a lot of sense. And like what's coming up for me is actually a conversation I was just having with my sister this morning about, when we were younger and our family wasn't in the like best financial place.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember I was of an age where I was aware of it. And, my parents weren't completely, protecting us from it at that point. They wanted to have conversations with us. And I remember like we still took a short trip to Disney. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember, them saying like their financial advisor was like, don't do that. That's crazy. Like, that's really financially irresponsible. And I just remember my dad being like, yes, and like,
Yeah.
we need to play. Like, we need a break. Like, life is hard right now. Life kind of sucks. There's a lot of crap going on. And so, yeah, we're going to take a few days and we're going to go make some fun memories and pretend like that stuff doesn't exist and just feel good and feel joy. And I feel like I've kind of always kept that wisdom from him. I got a lot of wisdom from him, actually, of like ways of. I remember the other one too that's coming through right now is he always says, like, as long as you can still laugh, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
even when things have gotten really hard, like, if
Yeah.
we can still find some way to laugh, if we can still find some way to like seek joy, create joy, like, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had this moment like right in the midst of the first lockdown that we had, where we were like everything closed for the first time. Nothing was open. No one was going anywhere. Like, it was probably, I mean, it was like late March, early April of 2020. And at that time, I was very adamant that every single day we take a walk, we go outside. Like, I
Mhm.
wish that I was quite as adamant as about it right now, as I was at that time. But I would say every single day for at least 3 months, we went for a walk, like whether it was a 10-minute walk, a 5-minute walk, a 20-minute walk. Some days it was an hour, but we went outside and we would walk. And it looked like the zombie apocalypse, or at least how
Mhm.
I would imagine it to be, because there was no one, no
Yeah.
cars were on the streets, no people were on the streets. Occasionally there would be someone like out walking a dog or doing the same kind of like walk around the block kind of thing. But it was so quiet. And
Mhm.
I live in Chicago, like
Yeah.
in a pretty urban area. Like, I'm on a major street, like there's usually noise at any point, and it was just so quiet. And I remember we were walking one day and my partner said something and I just laughed, and I like laughed, and it felt so loud. Like, I felt like it was like echoing through the silence. And I had a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like it almost startled me, because it was such a difference from that like stark quiet and
Mhm.
somber energy that was just like palpable at that point. And palpable, what word am I trying to say?
We'll get
Anyway,
there.
you could feel it. And when I laughed, like I said, I had this moment where I just kind of like came back in, and then I was just like, that felt really good. Like, it
Mhm.
felt really good to just laugh. Like, and I don't remember what it was about. It was like just some moment of normalcy, or like what felt familiar and normal and good, like amidst that moment, that like much larger moment of something else. Right.
Yeah. And like it's making me think of multiple things. Most recently, we've been watching this show called Clarkson Farm. It's
Okay.
the guy who hosted or created or whatever Top Gear.
Okay.
Um, but he has a farm in the Cotswolds and he's this car guy. His farmer retired. And so he's like, I can do it. I'll be the farmer. And we watched a couple episodes the other night and we were laughing so hard, like my abs hurt. Like I couldn't, I was like, I
That's
can't
great.
laugh anymore. We can't watch any more of the show. Like we've been laughing too much. And then in my head, I was like, what? There's no such thing. Laughing too much. Like,
Yeah, right? Exactly. No, it is good. And I love that it is a workout, right? Like, I
oh
think
yeah.
that's like a natural way of your body being like, these things are good for us, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I love that, finding those magical moments like in the mundane. And
Yep.
maybe that's because I have super strong Virgo energy. That's like one of the things, is like finding the magic in the mundane. But just like having those moments, being aware of those moments throughout your day. Like it doesn't have
Mhm.
to be necessarily a trip to Disney, right? Like,
Yeah.
or that like very stark difference or very, radical difference in something. It can be just, oh, I really love the way this feels right now, or I love the
Mhm.
way this looks, or I love the way that smells or sounds, or, like those tiny moments.
Well, and it's funny that you say that because, was, I lived in Massachusetts last fall. It was my first time ever being in that part of the country in the
Mm.
fall. And just, I mean, just driving like the kids like to their basketball practice. I was like, oh my gosh, look at these leaves in this lake. And oh my, you see this every day. This is amazing. But remember there was one hike that went on. We went on a lot of hikes. There wasn't a lot to do other than go on a hike.
Yeah.
And I was with the kids and I was like vocally like, oh wow, like, oh my gosh, look at how beautiful that is. And like took a couple pictures and stuff. And the little girl who's 8 at the time was like, why are you always like so amazed? Like, why do you always sound so amazed by everything? And I was like, because I genuinely am. Like, this is beautiful. Like the way
Yeah.
the light is coming in and hitting those leaves and like the smell of like the earth. And she was like, well, I think it smells like rotting leaves. And I was like, okay,
It does,
it
but
does.
it can also smell good,
But
right?
I also kind of like that smell. Like it
Yeah.
smells like comforting. And I remember, like raking leaves and jumping in them as a kid. But it was fun for me too to like remember like not necessarily just those kids, but any of the kids that I work with,
Hmm.
that they might not have somebody in their life who is, so just amazed by the colors of the leaves or the way that the
Yeah.
light is shining on the leaves at that moment in time.
I think
So
there's
it, yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No,
I
you're
was
fine.
going to say, I think there's also something about like, so I grew up in Vermont, and I'll say I believe that Vermont is maybe the most, not even maybe, like I think Vermont's the most beautiful fall foliage in the world.
It's
I've
on my
seen it
list.
in a lot of places, and truly, like I've never seen anything like Vermont. And I think it has to do with the maple trees. So maybe there's
Mm,
places in Canada that are similar, but there are these really vibrant reds that you don't see a lot of other places. And when I was growing up there, I remember all these people would come in from all over the world.
yeah.
Like we would play a game during fall foliage and we would try to see how many license plates we could find. Like I remember one year I found one from Hawaii and I was like, how did
Oh,
this person
cool.
even get here? Like how did this license plate from Hawaii? Like they had to take a boat and
Yep.
then, it's like, and then they drove. I'm sure it was something different, but looking back at it as an adult, but as a kid, I was like, wow, you would come all the way from Hawaii to come see the leaves. But I didn't know anything different at that
Yeah.
time, right? I'd never lived anywhere else. Robert says New York just across Lake
Mm,
Champlain. Yeah, Lake Champlain. It's kind of the same area, but yeah, it is beautiful. It's beautiful. The whole area is really beautiful. And so anyway, like I would, I eventually moved to New York is where I went. I went upstate New York for college. And when I drove back in the fall that year into Vermont, I hadn't been there for a while. And it
mm,
wasn't actually the first year. I think it was maybe a couple years in. I hadn't gone back for several years. And I drove back for some reason. And I happened to drive back during the fall. And when I crossed the border, like into Vermont, and I like started driving through um, the mountains, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, this is so beautiful. And I, I remember thinking like, oh, I didn't appreciate this when I
mhm.
lived here. And it wasn't until I had been, somewhat removed from it and not even that far, right? Like I said,
Yeah.
it's pretty similar, but there was just something about it that was like, oh, okay, this is really something to celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember like I just felt like magical when I was
Yeah.
there. Like it was a lot, and I was been having some meet and greet combos with people that are going to be counselors at the camp in Maine, and I said to them like I've like almost every day, like walking around, and that's like even in the summer,
Mhm.
like the leaves aren't changing, but it's still just gorgeous.
It is.
That
Yeah.
I'm like walking around in this place and I'm like, I get to live here. I get to work here. Like, what? Like, if you had even asked me a few years ago, like, where do I see myself? Like, New Orleans would definitely not have been on the list. Not
Yeah.
like that was totally completely random that happened. And then same thing with like, yeah, going and living in New England. Like, I don't know. Recently, somebody said something to me, like, "Oh yeah, like last year Halloween," and I was like, "Well, last year Halloween we had like a foot of snow.
Very
Um,
different.
it was
Very, very
very
different.
different from this experience. I like took some little kids trick or treating. They weren't little kids, so they didn't want to be by us, so they actually left. And then we went and like had pizza and probably a beer or something.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it still just seems amazing to me when I think
So,
about.
so different though. Yeah. Um, I love it. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about. I know you were saying your soul wisdom is really like getting in touch with that inner child, right? And
Mhm.
so all of those things, right? Like the raking of the leaves and smelling the earth and going trick or treating and all of that stuff. Really is kind of a way of being in that, right? It's a way of living that. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey in getting to know this way of yourself and accept it.
Mm.
How has that gone for you? What does it look like?
Um, that's funny that you added the "and accept it" part, right?
Yeah.
Because that still feels like a journey for sure. It's been really challenging, honestly. I want to give a little shout out to my girl Sark
Love
and the
Sark.
group that I joined with Second Wild World, and just her like playful posters and books, and like seeing
Mhm.
that energy from a woman who also kind of reminded me of like my grandma. Sorry, Sark, I hope you don't take offense to that. My grandma was a wonderful lady.
Somehow I don't think she would.
I hope she doesn't. If for some reason she ever stumbles across this conversation.
I hope she
Um,
does. I love Sark.
I love her.
Absolutely.
I love
Yeah.
her so much. But I think it was joining her Succulent Wild World group like 3 years ago that really helped me be on like a conscious journey to like accept that part of myself and having that permission to like play and create. And she calls it like in like a lot of realms, like the marvelous messy middle, and like
Yes.
all of her work is so colorful. And even our workshops that we did, like this direction, this poster behind me was like
Okay.
inspired by
Nice.
like a class that I had done with her. And then with that kind of opening up my creative side, realized how much I loved to like collage and create.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, this is going to sound weird, but if you ever were a little kid who played with glue in art class, that feeling of getting like the glue on my hands when I'm
Uh-huh.
creating and then getting to peel it off afterwards, it was such just like,
No, I don't. It doesn't sound weird. I just had this like flashback. So I was an art teacher, and I had this kid in my class that would just like pour the
uh-huh.
glue onto her hands and then like peel it off. I was just always like, "What are you doing?"
That was me. That was me. And I felt bad when I realized I was like, oh, I'm wasting. Ooh, like, but yeah,
Yeah.
I love to just like rub it on my hands and peel it. But so
Yeah.
now I have that experience while I'm creating.
Uh-huh.
So that's been really, really fun, like the more like physical creation aspects of it. But on more of like an emotional, like spiritual part,
Mhm.
it's been really hard, like being an adult, excuse me, who, like I said, there's that word when people say like, oh, you're so childish.
Mm.
Like, like it feels and sounds like icky.
Like an insult.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
venomous almost. And so I remember like, not even remember, I still kind of internalize that. We've
Mhm.
had conversations about this before. And so yeah, it's hard. It's really freaking hard to like
Yeah.
separate. And like it's only been probably since really moving to New Orleans and also being around other adults. It's a city of costuming and playing and music and joy. So I think it's been being around people like that that has helped me to like embrace like, oh, this is part of my magic. This is
Yeah.
part of like what people love about me, as at the same time that like it also has felt like something that's been something wrong with me, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I called it embracing my weirdness. And because the things that my ways of knowing and my ways of being, like, I'm very artistic. And in a lot of ways, I do feel that that comes across sometimes as not serious or too playful for certain environments, right? Like, I remember being in a corporate environment and my supervisor told me not to dye my hair purple because I wouldn't be taken seriously. And I remember being like really sad, also very angry, and like just not really sure how to reconcile that, because I was like, why does the color of my hair have anything to do with how I show up at work or whether or not I am, able to do my job? And eventually, after several years of being in that job and, fighting for the recognition, via titles and pay and all of those kind of like more traditional ways of seeing success, or labeling success, it was at that point that I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to dye my hair purple. And I dyed it not just like on a normal day, but I had started working remotely. I'm pretty sure I've shared this story with you before, so I apologize. But
It's a good story.
I was working remotely, so I wasn't really present in the office, and I could really kind of, I was still on video calls. This was way before everybody was on video calls all the time. But I remember usually when I would go into the office for the holiday party, which is when like all of the big, CEOs and C-suite level people would fly in from all over the world, I would go and get my hair done, and I would like find an outfit or, pack appropriately to make sure I was wearing very specific businessy kinds of things where I would be, taken seriously. And when I would go get my hair done, I would tell the person who does my hair, I'd say, oh, I'm going into the office and it's holiday party time, so please make sure, it's fun but professional. And so we'd get like tone it down from what I normally would do. And this particular year I was just like, I'm done with that. Like, I want purple hair and I'm gonna just dye my hair purple. So I dyed it bright purple, and I went into the office, and when everybody was there, and I sat in my boss's office, and I remember he was like looking at me and like looking up at the light and like looking down at me and kind of like squinting. And he didn't say anything, but I was like, I think he thinks his eyes are tricking him that my hair is purple, because here I sat like in my polka dotted dress with my purple hair, having a very serious conversation about budget projections and, whatever else we were talking about. And then, met up with him and a couple other people a little bit later, and one of them said to me like, purple, huh? Are you having some kind of teenage rebellion? And I was like, in a way I kind of am, right? Yeah. Like, I kind of am just like getting back in touch with that teenage version of me who was like, I don't care what you think about this. This is who I am, and why shouldn't I be able to express myself in whatever way that it is, right?
Yep. Yeah, and it's like, I'm thinking of it now as you're saying that, and I'm like, I wonder like if that's the other reason like why I was called to this city at this time. Because like my favorite and like most annoying point of advice from my sister in terms of like, what do I wear like when we're going somewhere here? Because you have, like you just said, it's like, okay, well, what's the vibe? Like, are we going, like, are we fancy? Are we costuming? Are we like, can I dress it up? Like, and she's like, literally, like, wear what you want to wear, show up how you want to show up, and that's correct. So she was like, if you want to show up full costume, great. If you want to wear your sweatpants and look like you're in your PJs, fine. And I remember being like really annoyed at that advice, and also like, wow, this is really freeing that I can just be me. So yeah, I feel like living here, I'm kind of like embracing that.
Mhm.
Which is still like culture shock though. Like it kind of has me afraid of like, oh gosh, am I going to keep feeling empowered to do this if and when I choose to not live in this city anymore?
Yeah.
Um,
I think
so
it's a practice, right? Like, and kind of bringing it back into what you were talking about with getting in touch with your inner child to begin with. You kind of, or the thing that you identified as how you got in touch with that was through visual arts, right? Like your art, your creative practices. And so this is taking that creative practice and then embodying it.
yeah.
And as you embody it, you get comfortable with it first as it comes out in a, on paper, or even the idea of like peeling the glue from your
Yep.
hands, right? Like that's putting it on your body. It's starting to wear it and starting to understand like, okay, I'm going to try this on for a second. And then I like how this feels. And now I'm going to take this into another realm of like, oh, I can dress up in costumes. I can, there are certain access points to that where it's more socially accepted. Like in a lot of places, Halloween, in some places, like every day.
Yep.
And, like I go to New York City and you walk down the street and it's like people are wearing whatever they want, like, so why do we hold ourselves into this expectation when we don't really have to? I mean, there are some laws, right, about what we can do and what we can, and we have to, live within that. But really, as far as like how we express ourselves, a lot of times I think we're holding ourselves in that prison.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I feel like, the like guidance that I keep getting, like the message I keep getting over and over is this like image of like a lighthouse or like a beacon, which is also funny that artwork is also above my head over here. Of like
have
the
I
woman.
shown you my beacon one?
I don't think so.
Oh my goodness.
I say I have another one over there that's like a lighthouse that sort of turned into like a very, very feminine lighthouse. She's got lots of curves.
I love it. I love it. Keep going. I'm going to find this while you're talking.
Yeah, but no, just like that reminder that like, kind of like what you said too, like wearing that weirdness on our sleeve. Like when I am like, the more that we feel comfortable being ourselves, wholly showing up, whether that's, wearing the playful stuff, being playful in general, like whatever that is, it's kind of like a beacon to others of like, here I am, come join me. It's okay to do this. It's safe to do this. Like, and also for me, like when I see people dressed up in fun ways or with fun earrings or like colorful outfits, it brings me joy.
Yeah.
Like it brings me a lot of joy to see them. And so it's like, why wouldn't I do that for the world too?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I love that. So I'm going to show this.
Ooh.
So this one, I'll get it a little closer here.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
Like it has, so this is one of my channeled arts. My channeled arts. I'm really struggling with words today. I apologize.
It's all good.
But yeah,
we're understanding.
Thank you. This one is called Beacon. And it came through. This one is really interesting too, because usually when I do these, so this is one of my creative practices. And generally when they come through, I receive them all, the whole image at once. And then pretty usually, now that I'm much more practiced in it, like when I first started doing it, sometimes the theme would come through sometime that day or maybe within a couple days, and then the message would come through all at once. But the image would always come through all at once. And this one actually has 2 layers to it. And so you can see that there's like this kind of more muted color around here. And that's because it originally started out like this brighter part, and the actual like lights of beacons of light came through in the first round, and then it sat for weeks.
Oh, wow.
Weeks. Yeah, that is not a normal thing for me.
Yeah, so you're usually a lot faster.
Yeah.
Faster, but it usually is like, oh, we're here.
Yep. And it just like comes through. But this one was like, no. And it just sat. And it also was interesting because I couldn't put it away. It was like, it was still like just kind of like dropping in, and I needed to sit with it for quite a while. So weeks went by, and then one day I got this kind of like nudge to go in and work on it again. And that second layer came in, and it was really kind of that like more muted, foggy color that went all around the outside. And then the message came in immediately. And it really is all about how sometimes we can't access our own gifts because they just feel normal to us. And at the same time, there's also this whole thing in there about projecting out our beacon, right? Our light, our ways of being, our ways of knowing, whatever our gifts are, and projecting those onto surfaces. Actually, can I read a little bit of this to you?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Well, it's like all the things that you're saying are like the things I feel like I've been like hearing and trying to like embrace and embody like over the past year or so, of like what you said, of the things that I kind of take for granted in myself, in like my way of being, how I perceive and interact with the world. Like the more that I'm like reflective on those and kind of like notice, I'm like, oh, not everybody does it that way, and not everybody like can see it that way or can access it that way.
Yeah.
And like, oh, maybe I can share this with people. Maybe I can teach this to people.
Absolutely. Yes, you definitely can teach it to people, and please share it with people. Okay, I'll read it.
Yeah.
I'll read it. So, beacon. We may not always feel the warmth of our own light or the power that it possesses. As we look out from the perspective of our own raging storm, we may only see the fog, the chaos, and the distance between where we stand and dry land. What we often neglect to focus on is the magic that exists in our ability to even envision this seemingly made-up destination in the first place. It is a testament to our innate ability to create that we would even know the potential for this place to even exist. When we can turn the beacon of our light inward to illuminate this vision, we are able to more clearly bring it into focus. It is actually from this place of internal exploration that we are empowered to lift the fog and navigate our way to safety more efficiently. As we bring our vision more accurately into focus, we realize that we've actually been there all along, and our journey of getting to know this place has been the very vehicle that carried us through the storm and placed us back on solid ground. Our minds are extremely powerful tools of creation. We can work with them, directing the light like we would operate a projector, finding the most clear surface to shine our vision onto, or allow it to get lost in the chaos of whatever surface it is currently existing on and within. We are taught to look behind us for the obstacles that prevent our forward movement, and that can absolutely be the case. If your projector is not plugged in and functioning properly, you may not see any vision at all, or the light may be blocked from shining through. However, if this message has made its way into your awareness right now, you may need to bring your attention to the future, or maybe even to the present moment. Are you standing in front of your own light source and reabsorbing your vision again and again back into your body? Are you preventing it from being illuminated and celebrated into the world? Are you spending your precious energetic resources attempting to adjust the focus when all along it is the environment around you which is creating the fog, distractions, or unwelcoming surfaces for your vision to be clearly seen? Not all surfaces are designed to reflect your vision in its full glory. It has no significance on the value of your vision or of the surface itself. Perhaps they are just not the right match to light the fire of your soul's desire. So
yeah,
there it is again. Let's see if I can hold it up.
Yeah, that was nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It just like when you were talking about beacon, I was like, oh, this is like, it wants to come through.
I feel like that happens a lot in our
I know,
conversations.
it does happen a lot in our conversations. Well, I think it makes sense that art speaks to and through us, like when we're in conversation with each other, because art, creativity, I'll say, not just
Yeah.
art, but definitely I feel like we both have an artistic language that we use, but creativity does speak to and through both of us. So when we're in conversation with each other, it would make sense that the artwork would want to come through and be in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even calling in Sark's energy, because
Yep.
it is that like very playful kind of energy. Like I remember recently she was traveling somewhere with her purple crayon. Like
Yep.
she has this giant purple crayon. If you don't know who
Mhm.
Sark is, like, go
You
find
gotta Google her.
Sark. She's so much fun.
Yep.
But yeah, like how comfortable would you be carrying a giant crayon on an airplane, right? Like you've got to be pretty comfortable with yourself. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm saying like that is badass. Like that is so great that she has the comfort level with herself to be able to say like, I don't really care what you think about me carrying around a purple crayon. Like if you want to carry around a purple crayon, do it. If you don't, you know?
Yep. It reminds me of even just a couple weeks ago, it was like pajama day at the school, and a bunch of the kids had brought like their loveys and like their stuffies with them. And this one girl had like a huge, like my hands won't even fit on the screen. It was massive. And she was leaving and she was like embarrassed to like carry it across the play yard and was trying to like convince one of her friends to like carry it for her. And I love her friend because she like walks away and she's like, just own it. Just own it. It's yours. You brought it. I'm leaving. And I was like, okay, a little harsh, but I love it. Like, because I think they were third graders. So they're like right at that age where like they can still play and all that, but like they're starting to care about what everyone thinks or what the boys think or what the. But yeah, it was just funny that her friend was like, just own it.
Just own it. I think it's great though, because what happened was when she was in her like really truly making that decision, right? She owned it. And she was like, oh, I bring something you love. Absolutely. I love this. And she brought it. And it wasn't until she got into that environment. Like this is such a good example, right? Because as soon as you get into that environment where now other people are looking at you and you're not in just the flow with yourself, right? But now that's reflected back to you through the eyes of other people. That's when you start to see their reaction. But their reaction is their reaction.
Their own.
And often that is like, I know even for myself, like I'm pretty aware of my inner dialogue. And when I find myself judging someone else, I can very easily and quickly see how it is that I'm actually judging myself. And I'm using that external thing as a reflection of how I'm seeing myself as like a comparison, right? And so, I mean, she probably doesn't know that now, you know, but that's what was happening. And that's what happens to us as adults when we show up in our, childlike ways. I don't want to say childish because I
know
think
it's not a great word. I've been trying to come up with a new one and I'm not sure what the word is. I like whimsical a lot, but that still feels right. I don't know.
Yeah, whimsical has like a different energy for me. I'm not going to tell you what what words to use or not. To me, it just like whimsical is more of a like fairy kind of energy, very nature centered. But there is something about having that childlike freedom, and it's the ish that really doesn't sit well with me specifically. Because the ish that's where it starts to feel like an insult, right? Because that we've used that word in that way, like, oh, that's very childish. But when you say childlike, or childlike feels very different.
Childlike definitely feels different. And like I said, it's been something that I've been trying to like sort of like workshop, I guess, of like what
Mhm.
words, but because it feels like it comes out as like a mouthful because it's like a childlike sense of wonder and curiosity and playfulness. And I'm like, that's too
Right.
many words. We need to shorten it up a little bit. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all kind of encompassed in the word joy or
Yeah.
playful.
Hmm.
Um, but those are not words that we often associate with adults. And
No.
so I think that's why it doesn't feel like it fits, because why can't we live a joyful life, a joy-filled life, right?
Yep.
If you're living in a joyful way, you probably are dancing and laughing and, all of the things that you
Yep.
do as a child when you are living in joy.
Hmm. When it's interesting because like as you're saying that too, like it's also not a word that we associate with like work, I feel like. So
Yeah.
especially like that comes up a lot being somebody who works in like childcare,
Hmm.
that it's like, oh, we'll go play and have fun. And it's like, yes, there is a lot of fun. There's a lot of like, I mean, that's part of why I love it, right? Like
Right.
that's why I keep going back.
Yeah.
Um, but like it's also like really hard and it's exhausting and you have to use parts of your brain and sometimes like muscles that you're like, oh my gosh, like we're playing tag again. Like this is fun, but also I don't have your energy like that. This also feels awful. Like this is my workout for today now. Like, um,
It's like we were saying about laughing, right? Like how
yeah.
when you laugh so hard that your abs hurt, the phrase that we use as an adult is like, "Oh, I laughed too hard."
Mm-hmm.
But wait, like why is that too hard? Oh, because it brought us pain, but that
Mm-hmm.
pain is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we're not using those muscles very often. So what if we looked at not that we were laughing too hard, but that we haven't been laughing enough?
Yes. Yes. I love that. And even as you're saying that too, I'm like conscious of like my mouth too from like smiling so big
Yes.
recently. And I'm
Like
like,
my
oh my God.
jaw's tired from like our
Mhm.
conversation.
From
Yeah.
like smiling. But I'm like,
Hmm.
again, I like to smile. I like to smile. I do. I
I
just
like it when you smile too.
thanks.
I mean, as someone who's in a conversation with you, if you were sitting on the other side, like trying to be all serious about, your face, then you wouldn't really be present in the conversation. And if
Yeah.
what's happening is you're naturally smiling so much in our conversation that your face hurts, I'm going to take that as a really big compliment.
Yep. Yep. And
Right?
it's
Like,
like, yeah, I mean, I notice it just like in like walking around, and again, not as much now because we have the masks on and such, but
mhm,
I've always flown a lot, and
mhm.
people do not smile in airports. They really don't. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Like sometimes it's the holidays, so I'm like, okay, maybe you have, family stuff. You're not excited about where you're traveling or the stress of travel. I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, for me, that's a joyous time. And I'm like, I'm traveling. I get like, and whether it's like I'm going someplace or I'm coming home, it's like,
Mhm.
yay, we're going somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
it's just something I've always noticed. And even more so now with the masks sometimes and not the masks is when I can see people's face. I'm like, no one's smiling.
No one's smiling. Yeah. It's I find myself smiling at people through the masks, and
Yeah.
then I'm like, they're probably just like, why are you staring at me with crazy eyes? Because when I smile, like my eyes get big, and so they're probably
Yep.
just like, what is happening? And I try to like
Yep.
smile bigger, and I'm like,
They
they
can't
can't
see
see
me.
it. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I've started just thinking like if I'm smiling at somebody, I send it from my heart,
Yeah.
because it's like you may not see my face, but you can feel it on some level. And
Yeah.
um yeah, I am a very smiley person as well. When I travel internationally, like I've traveled to China several times, and I always get the comment when I'm there, like, you're very friendly.
Yep.
And I think it's just because it's not as much ingrained in the like a part of the culture
Mm.
to that is a way of greeting.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I always get that like, oh, you're just very friendly, and I'm like, I can't even talk to you, I don't even know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think, and maybe because I can't communicate through that form of language, then I am communicating more without even necessarily realizing it, but just like communicating more through body language.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you say the friendly thing because I do feel like I'm approached a lot, but not in like a creepy way. I don't, sorry. When I said that, I was like, maybe that sounds creepy, but in a like,
I know
people
what you
asking
mean.
me
Yeah.
for directions or
Yes.
like a little kid like showing me their like cool toy that they have or
Yeah.
like that happens
I
a
get
lot
that a lot
actually.
too. Yes. Like people will just walk up to me and be like, "Ooh," and they'll like jump into a conversation with
Yep.
me like halfway in, like no introduction. And yeah, a lot of people that friends and family and whatever will be like, "Do you know that person?" I'm like, no.
No.
Don't
Yep.
know them. I do now. I mean, they
Yep.
just told me they're all about themselves. So
Yep.
or I'll get like parents um will be like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, why are you sorry? Like your child's like excited about something, and that's wonderful. So Robert has a
Yep.
message here. Let's see. It says he lost the chat box for a little while. That's okay. Great conversation. If you look up childlike in the thesaurus, the options all sound dreadfully stern
Uh-huh.
and judgmental. Oh, yes,
Uh-huh.
sacre bleu. Exactly.
Yeah. I've like
Yeah.
tried. I'm like was like creating like a vision board or I was like, okay, I'm gonna put some of these like descriptor words on there. And I was like, oh, these are awful.
No, yeah. Just make up your own words.
Sark
Just
does it.
yes, I do it all the time. I probably made up a few words in this conversation, sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose, but okay, so I'm going to end this conversation by telling you about smile markers, and that is a made up term that accidentally came out in a conversation I was having the other day. So we're having this summit right now called the Creativity Summit for a book that I was just published in with, there were 20 authors and all about creativity. And so it's happening now. And we're interviewing each other and doing workshops, and it's just so much fun. I'll put the link in the comments on this too, in case anybody's interested. But I was interviewing one of my co-authors, and she wrote a story as her chapter called Magdalene the Dragdalene, and she makes up like all this entire world. It's just how she sees the world, and she was talking about, and her name's Renee Deanda, by the way. I'm giving her credit. She's amazing. She sees characters in the people that she communicates with and that she has in her everyday world. So like Sir Pocus is one of the characters, and Sir Pocus is based on a person that she has in her life. And so is Mel the squirrel, and like all these different people.
Awesome.
Actually, you totally should read this chapter because I think you would really love it.
Yep, I definitely want to.
And anyway, so we were talking about something, and I said something about, it actually wasn't even in that conversation, same person though, but I wrote something about having mile markers for particular experiences. Like you go through life and you have these experiences, and you look back at them, and in the moment they're not always so joyful or joy filled, but when you look back at them, they become these mile markers of how you got to where you are. And she Jabberwocky. So so I said mile markers, and she was like, oh, I heard you say smile markers. And I was like, I'm gonna own that, because
Yep.
own it, right? Because that is absolutely, smiling for me is one of the indicators that I am in my truth. So when I'm smiling, whether it is because I'm just in a conversation, whether I smile in my meditations, where like I'll be in a meditation, something will drop in and I'll just smile and I'll be like, that's truth. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the idea of smile markers rather than mile markers. It just feels more fun. Right. So I encourage you, Erika, to make up your own world, make up your own words, and live joyfully and fully and smile as much as you can.
I appreciate that. Sometimes I do need permission. So
sometimes we do, right?
Yeah.
And in that, I'm giving myself permission too. Excellent. Well, Erika, tell us a little bit about Erika's Korner before we go, because we haven't talked about that, and how people can find you.
Yes. So Erika's Korner is a space that you can access on Facebook and also on YouTube, where I have like resources for people who work with kids. So some of it's crafts, some of it might be advice. Sometimes it's also just things that I think are cool or cute or will bring joy to people.
Nice.
And yeah, so like I said, it's on Facebook and YouTube, both the same name, Erika's Korner. It's been a little bit quiet recently, but I've got some cool projects and some things in the works. So if you head over there,
Yes.
there's some stuff coming.
Excellent. Yes. All right. So I'll put those links in there. And then I saw Robert said send it to me too. So it's actually that story that I'm talking about is in, where's my book? Oh, it's right here in front of me. Oh my goodness. Has all these things, all my notes for my interviews in it. But this is the book. So it's Creativity Is Whatever You Want It to Be. And it's on Amazon. It's actually, you can get it for the audiobook, you can get for 99 cents. So all right. Thank you so much, Erika. This has been a joy. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, make sure to like or subscribe so you get the notifications when we go live. Otherwise, this will be uploaded on Instagram TV and Podbean eventually. So we'll see you there. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.